Hey there everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Northwest Craftsman. Today we're going to be making some quick and easy coasters for your table and for your drinks. The first step is to choose the species of wood that you would like to use during this project. I chose to use some figured maple and walnut. When dimensioning your lumber, you don't need to make it exactly the size of the coaster to start, but make sure that you have it as a multiple of the dimensions for your coaster all the way around. Next, I laminated all of the pieces of wood together like I would a regular cutting board, keeping in mind which direction the grain was flowing so that I didn't get any grain tear out when I ran it through the planer. These cauls that I'm using to keep everything flat are really just pieces of scrap wood coated with packing tape to keep the glue from sticking. They work really nicely for keeping everything straight during a glue up and are much cheaper than commercially available cauls. Flattening the first side with a hand plane is really important to make sure that you've got a uniform surface before running it through the planer. Otherwise you can get an uneven surface that is difficult to get out. Next is cutting the coasters down to their final dimension. I started by ripping down the middle, resawing, and then cutting the coasters down to their final dimension. Because I wanted my coasters to be square, I could use the width of the strips on the coasters to measure the length I needed to cut. Using a stop block is a really handy way to get repeatable cuts without having to measure every single time. Next up, I sanded everything with 120 grit on all sides, followed by 220 grit, and then knocked down the edges with 220 grit. If I was to do it all over again, I would sand them while it was still in the strips because they were pretty hard to do when they were this small. Next up came 3 coats of wipe-on polyurethane that I made myself using a 50-50 mix of lacquer thinner and polyurethane. because I made a wipe-on poly instead of a traditional poly, it only took about an hour between coats before it was ready for the next one. I also made sure to knock down any of the nibs that were on the surface with a little bit of quadruple zero steel wool, and that helped to keep everything nice and smooth. Well, that's it. Thank you guys very much for joining me today. I am super happy with the way that these things turned out, and I hope that you learned how easy it is to make some of your own. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the comment section down below, and look forward to seeing you next time. All right, bye.